Hello class. We are doing this lesson as a video today for two reasons, one of two reasons. Either I am absent and I still need to teach you things, or I just need to rest my voice. I'm here, but my voice needs to be rested. So treat this as though it's regular class, but you can watch it at your own speed, and we'll have Chromebooks in class so that you can do that. But this is a regular class assignment, and it's expected to be done at the end of the period. So we're going to be talking about annotated bibliographies a little bit, which is something that is required for you to have when you do your summative presentation on Nigerian background. When we do an annotated bibliography, there are 3 steps, and I'm including with this lesson a class set of an annotated bibliography, but then you'll see the annotated bibliography on this slideshow as well. So if you want to look at a paper version of this later, you can do that, but the class set needs to be left in class since it's a class set. You can always come back to this video as well to look at the examples that I'm pointing out. So the first step, which you'll see on this slideshow as well as on the paper in front of you if you have it, is that you need to just fill out this simple chart about the resource that you found. And this chart asks you to answer some fairly simple questions about your resource that's going to help you start evaluating the quality of your resource. So for example, you need to look at the URL, because I'm assuming most of you are using online sources. You'll notice that I've circled that the one that I'm doing this example for is a .com, and that I've written the entire URL in the margin there, just because maybe I need to go back and find it again. It's also there for if I was to turn it into a teacher, the teacher could then follow that URL as well. The sponsor, so it's asking, who's sponsoring the website, which is information that you need to look for on the website. Does it provide information about the sponsor, which again is information, that's a question that you're going to have to look for. The timeliness, how current is it? Is it up to date? Those are fairly simple questions. You just have to find that information. The purpose, do they have a purpose beyond your education? Who's the author and the publisher, and the links. What I'd like you to remember is something that Miss Moore talked about in the library yesterday, which is that, really this is helping us understand the four ways that we evaluate resources, and we call it CARS, or credibility, accuracy, reasonableness, and support. So by answering these questions, you are then starting the thinking process on how credible is this source? How accurate is this source? Is the information that I'm being given, is it worth listening to? Is it reasonable? Are they just giving me information because they're trying to tell me something that I need to know, or do they have some kind of hidden motive behind it? And then support. Are they being supported by by a university, or are they being supported by some other entity that's just trying to make money off of the fact that this website exists? And so by answering these questions, you're starting that thinking process on how credible is it, how accurate is it, how reasonable is it, and who is supporting this information, so that you can then make a better judgment call as to if you should use the information or how much of the information you should use, which is going to be part of your grade on the final version of this project. The second step to creating an annotated bibliography is just to make your citation. So once you've gone through and found that information about your annotated bibliography, or about your source, then you actually make that bibliographic citation, which we have done in the past in this class, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time about it. You can see that in the example, I've created a bibliographic citation for the website that I went to after I answered those questions in step 1. This is information that I had to find as I was searching around the website. So you can see that I found the author and the title of the article and the title of the, all of the information. If you need to remember the basic format or the basic requirements of a bibliographic citation, here they are for you. So author's last name, comma, the author's first name, the title in quotation marks, the source underlined, the publisher, the date, and the page location. The one thing that I have added at the end of mine in the handwriting is the date that I visited. So you can see that the date that this was published was January 8th, 2015, but I actually visited the website on January 29th, 2018, and I've listed both of those dates. Just to be clear that if somebody were to visit the website at a later date and it were to be changed, they may need to understand that, like things on the web change, and your citation is for a specific date, and it may have changed since then. And that's a really important step for including in a bibliographic citation of a website. The third step, and arguably the most important step, although the other two are also important, you can't get a complete grade without having done the other two, is the evaluation of your source, which asks you to take into consideration a lot of the stuff that you found through answering the questions in step 1 and evaluate whether this is a source that's worth your time in terms of including information from that source in your research. So your instruction is to go through 3 steps in your evaluation, and those 3 steps should end in a fairly decently sized paragraph. I would say that the paragraph that I've provided is a minimum, not a maximum, and it certainly is not everything that I could have said. So you don't want your paragraph to be any shorter than what I've provided for you here. But the paragraph should do 3 things. The first thing it should do is it should summarize the important information from your source, which will show the person who's reading your annotated bibliography that you actually looked at the source. You actually read the words of the source and didn't just kind of say, well, the title seems to be all that you've looked at. So you'll see, if you were to read the first paragraph here, or the first sentence of the 2 sentences of the paragraph here, that's my summary. So I talk about what kind of information is there. I list in broad terms the types of information that I will find in more detail in the article that I found online. I've also started to talk a little bit about the author in those lines, which kind of bleeds into our next step, which is the assessment. How useful is this source, and is this a valid source for us to be using? Again, if you're thinking about the answers to your question in step 1, those answers should help you come up with a response to the second part. And so if you read the lines that I've underlined in blue, you'll notice that I'm evaluating how much I can trust this author. And I'm noticing as I'm writing these lines that I maybe can't trust the author as much as I hoped for this particular source. And that's kind of a thing that happens sometimes with research. Sometimes you find a source and it seems like it's going to be good, and then you go through this process and you think, it's not as good as I hoped it would be. Maybe I can still use it, but it certainly isn't a source that I should use too much, because it's just not that strong of a source. And that helps us go forward into the third and final step of your your paragraph, and that's the reflection step. You need to reflect on how much can you use, or should you use it or not. In the last section of this paragraph that I've written, which I've underlined in red, you can see where I start to reflect on, well, I can use it, however, I can only use it to some extent. This isn't a source that I'm really going to overly use because it just doesn't seem that strong. It's not a problem if you create an annotated bibliography for a source that you're only going to sort of use. If you're going to use it, fine. What's more important is that you show the critical thinking that's required of you to show that you understand how to evaluate these sources, and that you understand not only how to evaluate the sources, but what to do with the source when it's not as good as you want. Hopefully you don't have too many hopefully most of your annotated bibliographies are going to be for really good sources, strong sources, but sometimes you find that you're evaluating a source that's not as strong as you want. So the assignment that you're going to do today is going to be the first assignment in the gradebook for the semester. You are going to be creating one entry for your annotated bibliography. So eventually you will do more of these and you'll turn them all in at the end of the research project when you do your presentation. But since this is the first grade, it is formative, it's not summative, but since it's the first grade, you want it to be as good as possible because you want to start your grade off on the right foot. So let's just take a couple minutes to go over how this will be graded. You can get a 3 on this assignment, which means that your annotated bibliography, or in this case, it's not the full bibliography, it's just one entry, has a citation, it has a summary, and it evaluates the source. So if you just do those things, you cite it, you summarize it, you evaluate it, then you can probably get a 3. To get a 4, however, it's more important that you cite it, summarize, and evaluate it, but that those citations, summaries, and evaluations are correct, that you're not making needless mistakes, that you're not evaluating a weak source as a strong source, that you're not evaluating a strong source as a weak source. That would be another, not so great thing. And that you're showing that you're correctly applying your critical thinking skills to the research that you're doing. For a 2, your annotated bibliography is probably going to start to have incorrect parts to it. Your citation may not be completely correct. Your summary may be incorrect or brief. Your source evaluation may show that you did not understand how to evaluate the source, and this is where you need to be careful. If you found an online source that is a weak source, and you start to try to spin it so that you're trying to tell me that it's a strong source, but it's obvious to me by looking at the source that it's not as strong as you want me to believe it is, then you're not showing that you understand those critical thinking skills that you need to be showing here. And you're not going to get any higher than a 2 on this assignment in that case. A 1 being incomplete means that you don't provide the bibliography with the citations or the summaries or the source evaluations. So if you're turning anything in at all, it's probably really brief. There are probably lots of problems. You're not doing the things that we just talked about. So your assignment today is to create an annotated bibliography. Like I said earlier, it's just one entry to the annotated bibliography. As you continue research in the future, you'll be doing more of these. But for now, you're only doing 1. And that 1 is due today at the end of the period. So using the source that you found yesterday, you're going to complete the annotated bibliography worksheet, and you're going to use the example worksheet to help you do that. Again, you can use the example worksheet, but it is a class set, or since you have a computer in front of you, you can flip around to different parts of this presentation because that example is also included in the presentation. This is due at the end of the period, so you should be turning it in to me, or if there's a substitute, you should be turning it in to the substitute at the end of the period for a grade. Things that you should remember as you're moving forward are these. Number 1, you'll need 4 sources for your presentation, 2 for pre-colonialism and 2 for post-colonialism. So you're doing essentially one of these today. One of the 4 sources. Now, if you have a partner, your partner is also doing one of those 4 sources today. You are not doing this together, which means that at the end of today, you may end up with 2 sources, but that also means that you're going to need at least 2 more as we continue research. Each source will need to have an annotated bibliography, as we talked about. So as we continue research, you'll continue to do annotated bibliographies. And your annotated bibliographies will be due when you present, and those will need to be in alphabetical order. So the one that you're turning in today will also be included, if you use it for your presentation. It will also be included as part of the complete annotated bibliography at the end of the unit when we start those presentations.